And welcome to America's Heroes Group with our roundtable and our partner, Jesse Brown VA Works. December is AIDS Awareness and National Human Rights Month. Today is Saturday, December 10th, 2022. Just heard our host, Cliff Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host, Army National Guard veteran. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith, and our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Honor Productions. And we have a great show for you today and a great segment. Our panelist has joined us today, Robert Christopher. He is the executive for Jesse Brown VA Business Development. We're going to talk about business development at the Jesse Brown VA. When I think of business development, I'm thinking about ways to make money. So, Christopher, can you tell us what business development means to you in the Jesse Brown VA?
Sure. So every hospital has a business development office, and they pretty much have the same function, and that is, you kind of nailed it, to bring in new patients. Recruit patients, retain patients. That's the primary function of business development. Now, when I tell people what I do, and when I tell them that I do it at a VA, a lot of times I get this reaction, well, wait a minute. Why does the VA need an office like that? I mean, the veterans, they're sort of a captive audience. Where else are they going to go? And maybe 20 or 30 years ago, or even 10 years ago, that would be a fair statement. But as you may know, within the last 10 years, there's been a number of actions in Congress that have given veterans choices in where they receive their care. And so now we are having to compete not only with other VAs, but with every hospital in this market, which I think is a good thing. It makes us better. So that's pretty much, from a 10,000-foot view, what business development is at Jesse Brown.
Is that a standard thing at VAs across the country, or is that something unique to Jesse Brown?
I think it will become a standard thing. I think that's the direction that we're all going in. But I think Jesse Brown was one of the first, if not the first, to have a business development office. So in my office, I have a team of, well, we're growing. Actually, I started out with 10. I think now we're up to 15. But so all the communications and public affairs folks are under me. Strategic planning, data analysts, market research. I have 2 market growth coordinators. I believe you talked to Laura and Patrick, or they were on this segment either a month or 2 ago. So I have a full team. It's not just me, and I'm really fortunate because my team have a lot more talent in this than I do.
I know it's a lot of work and a lot of time to put into business development. So you can tell us how does this help veterans as a whole?
Well, so in the area we serve, so Jesse Brown's, we call it a catchment area. If we were a church, we'd call it a parish. So our catchment area is the city, everything within the city limits of Chicago, near south suburbs, and then 6 counties in northwest Indiana. Mm-hmm. And within that catchment area, we estimate that there are approximately 55,000 eligible unenrolled veterans. So they're eligible to come to Jesse Brown for care, but for a variety of reasons, they're not enrolled. So how this benefits veterans is we have an opportunity to get out into the community in Chicagoland and in Northwest Indiana to talk to veterans in a general sense about their benefits with the VA, benefits that they've earned and paid in full. Think of it like the world's biggest HMO, except for veterans, there's no premiums. They earned it. And we get to tell them about that. And we're more than just a hospital. We do a whole lot of things. And we get to share that with them. And then we ask them to, consider coming to see us. And even if they come, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and maybe the experience they had wasn't the best, we ask them to give us another chance because I wasn't there 10 years ago, but we're not the same place they might remember.
Now, from what I understand, you're not a veteran. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So what motivated you to get into business development and to get into helping veterans?
Well, thank you. I get asked that question a lot, and I love answering that question. So I started my career in the VA. I think everyone really who's drawn to a career in healthcare, whether it's in the VA or not the VA, we're drawn to it for the mission. We're people who work in healthcare are typically very mission focused, and we have a very specific mission, taking care of people, helping people. When you add to that the very special mission that the VA healthcare system has, which is not only taking care of people and their health needs, but taking care of veterans, that just really resonated with me, because then the mission becomes super focused, super important. I'm not ashamed to say I'm patriotic, and I fully understand and respect the debt we all have to our veterans. And so it's an honor. And for me, I started my career in the VA, and then for about 15 years worked at Northwestern, which I loved. And then I came back to the VA. So it was a homecoming, but it made me realize this second round that working in the VA is not just a job, for me anyway. It's a vocation. And I don't think I'm alone in saying that. I think most of us who work there feel the same way.
So take me into a little bit more about business development, your job every day. What's the typical day like? How do you go about your job in order to try to get the information out there and try to develop and cultivate a bigger community coming to and utilizing the VA?
Yeah, so I wish there was a typical day. There really aren't any. But if I had to describe a typical day, it's we're doing a lot of planning, strategic planning in capturing, recruiting, meeting with those 55,000 eligible unenrolled veterans. And any strategic plan any good strategic plan has to be largely informed by data, and the data will point us in the direction we need to go. I can't just say, okay, there's 55,000 people out there, let's go get them, because they're not all in the same place, and we have a pretty big territory to cover. And we try to gather as much information as we can, not just geographic, but demographic. And if there's any health information that's out there, we try and get that too. And then it's working with and partnering with people throughout the community, government organizations, non-government organizations, churches, veteran service organizations, the police departments. They're great partners for us, by the way, law enforcement, because so many people who work in law enforcement are veterans. And a lot of them, because as police officers, they typically have very good benefits, but as they start to retire, they become very interested in their veterans benefits. And so it's a great opportunity for us to talk to them. So we're planning, we're partnering, we're out in the community. I tell people that the work we do is not unlike that of a fundraiser. To be successful as a fundraiser, you have to do three things. First of all, you have to establish a relationship. Secondly, you have to tell the story of the organization you're raising funds for. And then you make the ask. And that's what we do, except we're not asking for money. We're asking for veterans to consider coming to Jesse Brown for their health care.
That's got to be the easiest sell when you think about it, because like you mentioned, you're basically not paying any premiums to use the services. And it's something that's beneficial for really any veteran. For like me personally as a veteran, I mean, I never really thought of, because I had private insurance and private care on the side, utilizing the VA. But then as I got older and also doing this show and hearing stories like the things that you guys do in the real world, it made me more curious and actually started to realize that it's something I really need to investigate and make sure that I get the most out of what's available to me. This makes sense. And also, coming from a veteran's perspective, a lot of things that people can see in the VA may not be things that I can get in the civilian world, which I thought was really, really helpful. So I really appreciate the work you guys do. And I think it's so important that people really don't realize is that you have to get out there and get the word out. And the work that you do is so important for that reason. So you have an event coming up. Tell us about the PACT Act event Jesse Brown is hosting on Tuesday, December 13th, which is coming up this week coming up. What is that about?
So system-wide throughout the country, this next week, starting tomorrow, the VA is having what it's called PACT Act Awareness Week. I have to say that slow. PACT Act Awareness Week. And at Jesse Brown, we'll be having a town hall on, as you said, Tuesday the 13th from 5 to 6:30. Anyone who's interested, whether they're a Jesse Brown patient or not, anyone who's interested, think they might have an interest in the PACT Act and what that covers, and I'll get into that in a moment, is welcome to attend, and you can attend either in person or virtually. But as many people know, when veterans who serve our country are overseas, many of them have been exposed to toxic hazards, things like toxic air, radiation, smoke, Agent Orange, burn pits, and other environmental hazards. And years later, those exposures have sometimes caused veterans to develop health conditions which impacted and in some cases took their lives long after the battle had fallen silent. So for too long, too many of these veterans and their survivors weren't able to get the toxic exposure-related care and benefits they needed and deserved. But fortunately, thankfully, those days are over, and thanks to this new law called the PACT Act, which I believe the president signed in August of this year,
Sounds about
the
right.
VA has, the VA has expanded health care and benefits for millions of veterans and their survivors. I think this is actually the biggest expansion in the history of veterans health care.
Yeah.
And it includes a lot of Vietnam-era veterans, Gulf War veterans, and post-9/11 veterans. So to put it simply, any veteran who served in the Vietnam era, the Gulf War era, or the post-9/11 era may be eligible for new or increased health care and benefits as a result of this new law. If you would choose to attend our town hall in person on Tuesday, not only will you get to hear from speakers, from our physicians about this, you'll also have an opportunity to have a toxic exposure screening. We'll have representatives there from the Veterans Benefits Administration, the VBA, who can assist with filing claims. And then there'll be people there from Jesse Brown eligibility to help veterans enroll if they're not already enrolled. So if you think this might be the thing for you, I would strongly encourage you to attend in person. If you're not able to, then definitely attend virtually.
Now you said this is for veterans and non-veterans. Is that right?
It's for veterans and their survivors. So yes.
Okay. I think that's important for all veterans to really think about attending this event. It's Tuesday, December 13th at the Jesse Brown VA. Make sure you make an effort to get to the PACT Act event for Jesse Brown. I think it's really critical that you mentioned also something really important, I think, is the screening, because a lot of people have no idea what they've been exposed to. And there's so many things that we touch and deal with, in our different occupations, whether you're in infantry or whether you're a mechanic or whether you're in medical field. There's so many things that we have touched, and if you've been deployed, oh my God, there's like a lot of stuff that's out there. Burn pits we talked about in our show before. I think it's really important to go out there and get screened to see what is in your body, to make sure that you are taking care of your health and being so proactive about taking care of your health. What would you say to the veterans about the need to use the VA beyond this event, but what would you want to say to veterans to make them be more interested? If this was if you had a 30-second commercial you wanted to give right now, what would that look like or sound like?
Well, I'm not trying to poach someone away from a doctor. If they're happy with their doctor, great. I would still encourage them to enroll in the VA because, as I said, the VA is like an insurance policy. The premiums are paid in full. You never know when you'll need us. I think we learned that experience through COVID with so many people losing their insurance and so forth. We're there for the veterans whenever they need us. But for those who are thinking about maybe changing or are coming to the VA for the first time, I would say please consider it. We've been taking care of veterans for 75 years. We do it better than anybody else. We have the full rate. We are a tertiary facility at Jesse Brown. We're affiliated with Northwestern and the University of Illinois. We have some of the top doctors in the world working at our hospital, and that's because we think our veterans deserve the best. They get the best. And I would also add, if you live in areas near one of our outpatient clinics, we have 4, one in Crown Point in Indiana, one on the northwestern campus downtown, and then one on the south side in the Auburn Gresham neighborhood, and finally one in Chicago Heights. So we're trying to get closer to our veterans. We realize not everybody can come to the Illinois Medical District, so we're looking to get closer to where our veterans live.
And that's interesting because we do a show that basically goes out around the world, but for the most part, the majority of our audience is across the United States. Jesse Brown is, from my understanding, from my experience working with Jesse Brown, being there myself, and also having traveled to the two VAs here in Illinois. Both of those VAs, Hines and Jesse Brown, are exceptional facilities. I've been so impressed by. I've taken other veterans when they had serious health issues to the hospitals, and they have been amazing at how attentive and also how concerned they are about taking care of these people. I mean, these are, at the end of the day, these are veterans, these are people, these are human beings that need sometimes emergency treatment, sometimes just regular checkups and things like that. That is something I've even wanted to see more of in the civilian hospitals here in Illinois. We have some of the best in the country in this area. Now, having said that, some people might be listening to this. They're maybe in an area that and they had they've had heard horror stories in the past about the VA and how things have been, or maybe had bad experiences with other people they've known, maybe even family members and things like that. How do you differentiate, or could you differentiate, the type of level of excellence you see at the Jesse Brown VA versus what you see across the country? What would you recommend to someone who's in an area who does not maybe familiar with their local VA? How do they determine whether or not their VA is up to the same standard as, say, a Jesse Brown here is in Chicago?
I would say go to if they live outside of the Chicagoland area. I can speak to the VA hospitals in this area, but if they live outside of the Chicagoland area, go online and Google search your local VA, pull it up. Like us, it will have satellite clinics as well. So even if you live, say, 40 or 50 miles away from the closest VA hospital, chances are pretty good that there's an outpatient primary care clinic closer to you where you can get primary care and in some cases behavioral health care. And then you probably will want to ask veterans in your area who have gone to those clinics for their feedback. I think that's really important. They're going to tell you their experience. And I would ask more than one person, because sometimes when you ask somebody an opinion and you ask 10 people an opinion, you get 10 different answers. But I would encourage them to do their research as they would when they're looking for health care anywhere. And there is a saying, you talk about, because the VA is not only the nation's largest healthcare system, it's a public system. So that means our warts are a little bit more exposed than everybody else's, but they have warts too. But if you've seen one VA, you've seen one VA. We're all different. We have the same name. We work for the same enterprise. But, Jesse Brown and Hines are both excellent facilities, but we're not the same. We have our differences. We have those things which make us special. So I would tell people, if they heard something or a horror story that happens in, Phoenix, Arizona, don't assume that's happening everywhere else, because they're not.
I think that's really important. I think you said something really, really critical, and I think people need to understand that all hospitals are not the same, even in the Jesse Brown system, or in the Illinois system, but even across the country in the VA system in general. Every place has their own strengths and weaknesses and specialties based on the demographics that they serve. So I think it's so important that we basically, take a look at what's in your community and then investigate like anything else. Unfortunately, I've been reading too much that, especially in rural areas, a lot of veterans are not taking advantage of even doing the investigation to find out what's in their area. And that concerns me a little bit. In urban areas, it seems like it's a little more, maybe it's easier to get to a VA hospital. But in rural areas, it seems like we talk to a lot of veterans in rural areas, they don't seem to have even an inclination to reach out and see what is available, but they are suffering and have a lot of serious health ailments. And a lot of these people are just struggling through it without getting any kind of help. So if you're in that situation, reach out and find out what is there in your area and get the help. I think it's so critical.
Right, absolutely. Do that research. And as I said, even if you live some distance from the nearest VA hospital, chances are you live very close, or closer than you think, to a VA clinic.
Robert P. Christopher joined the Jesse Brown VA as an executive business for business development in March of 2021. He's a Memphis native. Thanks for your time and thanks for being on our show.
My pleasure. Have a good evening.
This is America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back.
Thank you for watching another episode of America's Heroes Group, where we provide education about resources and information for our veterans, military, and their family.
We have in our chase bags, we have a care package of hygiene, we have shaving equipment, we have razors, and for the women we have the same personal hygiene items for them as well. And we want to say thank you for their service. This is Chase Bank. Thank you very much. People in the neighborhood, free haircuts, the service, the food. Look good. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Thank you, ma'am. Okay.
On behalf of Cliff Kelley, America's Heroes Group, we sincerely thank Chase Bank for coming where it matters to help homeless veterans have a hot meal today and a care package. We are sincerely grateful for this partnership. Yes. Yes.
Welcome to America's Heroes Group. Hear your voice where we connect the disconnected intentionally.
Who is Cliff Kelley, the governor of talk radio, the icon of radio throughout the world.
Chauncey Spencer II and I, again, share a special relationship. His late great father, Tuskegee Airman Chauncey E. Spencer, took me as a child on my first airplane ride.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is something that people need to see. Often we don't, do the things to show how great our people are. It changes the paradigm of how people think about us, about the collective consciousness of what it means to be us.
And we've been having great conversations about trying to get more African Americans into aviation. And we got a bill that we're trying to get passed that would allow the Pell Grant to be used to help finance aviation education.
This is where I started with this entire conversation by saying, if it were not for America's Heroes Group, I would have given up. So I want to get all my accolades out the way on behalf of America's Heroes Group. Ms. Glenda, thank you. Thank you.
Welcome back to America's Heroes Group, our roundtable with sponsor and partner RHF Ninja Warrior Competitions. December is AIDS Awareness and National Human Rights Month. Today is Saturday, December 10th, 2022. Our host is Cliff Kelley. I'm Sean Clifford, the co-host, Army National Guard veteran. Our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega with Scouts Honor Productions. Last but not least, our executive producer is Glenda Smith. And we have our partner on the line, Mr. Darren Jeffrey. He's a founding board member of RHF and also the original course creator, builder for the TV show American Ninja Warrior on NBC. He has brought us a panelist, Josh Woehr, U.S. Army Sergeant Major and White House Fellow. We're going to talk about RHF Ninja Warrior competitions, the purpose, mission, and agenda for the upcoming calendar year of 2023. It's about that time. So how are you guys doing?
Doing wonderful. How are you, Sean?
Doing great, doing great.
Yeah, Sean, doing good. Thanks for having us.
My pleasure, my pleasure. So tell us, give us an introduction real quick, Darren, about Josh, and let us know what is going on for 2023.
Absolutely, absolutely. Very exciting to be back on the show and being a co-host with you. It's quite an honor. Jumping into it, Josh and I met about 8.5 years ago in Hawaii. I was teaching a class for some of the military folks that I get to work with, and Josh was one of the students of the class, and we just hit it off from day one and roll the clock forward. Here we are today, 8 years later. So Josh Woehr has been an inspiration and a mentor to me as far as taking an idea and getting it to, delivering it, getting it to fruition. And so,
Josh. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was just going to ask Josh if he wanted to jump in and talk a little bit about when him and I had met.
Yeah, I think first, thanks for having me, Sean. I appreciate it. Darren, same here. I think the funnest story about how we met is within 24 hours of meeting Darren, he had knocked me unconscious.
What?
Yeah, exactly. And yet here we are 8 years later, we're friends.
Best way to meet somebody.
We were in Hawaii. He was teaching us, rappelling, how to create rope systems, how to move gear or casualties in case you're in a mountainous environment. So this military training we're doing, we're rappelling down the face of a mountain, kind of like a waterfall coming in. And I'm probably 15 feet up from the bottom, and a rock sheared off. The rope sheared a rock off. Thankfully, I was wearing a helmet. Hit me upside down unconscious, and there comes Darren running to flip me upright and keep me alive. So I'm in debt to Darren for that. So that's a fun story about meeting Darren. The truth is he's been a great friend ever since then.
I used to love rappelling. It was so fun back in the day. But so, Josh, tell me, why did you join the military?
Oh, yeah, that's a great. All right, why did I join the military? I tried to join the military a few times. I guess I'll briefly share those. So the first time I tried to join the military, I think I did about 8 or 10 weeks of school my junior year of high school. I just wasn't having it at the time. I was young and immature. You'll probably see some patterns here about, as we talk about how the military has really helped me grow and mature as a person, as an individual. But I dropped out of high school. I went to the recruiter's office. I went to every recruiter other than the Navy. I had decided based on a stepdad who was in the Navy, I didn't want to be in the Navy. That said, I went to every other recruiter's office, said I want to be in special operations. The Army was the only one that provided a contract that allowed you to at least try out for special operations. So I tried to do that, and then when they realized I was 16 and I didn't have a parent that was gonna sign for me, they realized I didn't have a high school diploma, I didn't have a GED. The recruiter said, "See you later." So,
wow.
So I actually went back to school, dropped out again after, started my senior year, tried again. They told me no. I went back to school, finished school, and then I joined the military. I basically graduated 3 weeks later. I was in the Army. So that's the when of joining the military. I think I graduated in May, and by June, and by July I was in the military. I was at Fort Benning, starting basic training. Why I joined the military, I think there's lots of reasons why I joined the military. As I reflect and look back, I can tell you, as someone who's been in the military for 24 years, I would say, though I didn't realize it at the time, I was trying to prove something to myself. Another reason I joined the military is I was just trying to get out of the environment that I was in as a young person. Obviously, some good influences, some bad influences, but I really didn't see a way forward that was successful. I think I always had this thought or this feeling as a teenager, like, hey, there's something more, but I couldn't figure out what that was. And so for me, it was the military I was smart enough to know I needed to grow up and I needed to mature. And I felt like the military would would provide me that opportunity more than anything else. So that's just a quick synopsis of that.
Wow. So you kind of touched on a lot of the same reasons why I joined the military. I can relate to a lot of what you said, except for the part trying to join at 16. It was going through your mind at 16 if you're trying to get into the Army, the Special Forces, no less. But the thing of it is that, there's an acronym we all know in the military, particularly if you're in the U.S. Army. If you spell U.S. Army backwards, it's a different acronym. We won't say the acronym on on national TV, international radio and such, but why did you stay in the military?
Why did I stay in the military? I joined the military before 9/11. So 1999, I joined the military. We talked about why I joined. And I think what I found those first couple years before 9/11 is there were some things that were awesome about the military that I loved. That first, it was relationships. The relationships that I had with my teammates, with the people that I trained with, I worked with, I lived with. You build really strong relationships. The other one is I really got to start pushing myself and challenging myself, figuring out what are my limits physically, mentally, where do I start to fail or break down, or where do I thrive? So those are some of the reasons, that I was already enjoying the military. I found success really for the first time in my life in the military. It was the first time I was successful at stuff. And part of that was because I really had this new slate to start with. But then 9/11 happened, and all of a sudden my reasons for being in the military changed. I think, for all of us who remember, I think everybody can tell you, people my age at least can tell you where they were on September 11th when they heard about the towers falling in New York. I was out in the field doing a live fire exercise. We had been out there for a couple of days, and someone had come out to refuel us with some drinks and food, and we heard it on the radio. But all of a sudden, I found myself. So that was September of 2001. By the end of September, I found myself deployed in support of the initial invasion to Afghanistan, and then that just continued from there. All of a sudden, you started to see purpose and calling in what you did. You started to see the people to your left and your right, those same people you had built those strong relationships with. Like, there was different sacrifices that happened. Ultimately, like the ultimate sacrifice, somebody giving their life, but even more than that, the desire to say, like, hey, I'm going to go put myself on the line, for something bigger than myself. So the reason I stayed in the Army, and the reason why I'm still in the Army today, is it turned into a calling. It turned into a purpose. America and the values that America have, the right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Like, not everybody has that. Like, and to be able to have a small part with this group of men to your left and right, or women to your left and right, that can go after that you can hopefully create a positive influence or positive change. That's why I've stayed in the military as long as I have.
Wow, that's amazing. So, Darren, do you have a question? Darren?
Yeah, I wonder if we lost him.
Oh, no, I'm here. Sorry, guys. Yeah, no, you can. So exciting to hear Josh talk about it firsthand. After him and I had met a few weeks later, I ended up back in North Carolina at Fort Bragg, and I was going to do some follow-up training there. And Josh invited me to come over to his home after work and meet his family. And they essentially rolled out, after the kids all went to bed, they rolled out this blueprint of some property that they had purchased already. And Josh had said, hey, I want to start a nonprofit that helps strengthen military families and breeds resiliency in the military families. And so RHF was born, and so I'd love for Josh to talk about, Josh is the founder of RHF. And so I'd love to just ask Josh, in your words, what is RHF?
Yeah, thanks, Darren. Yeah, I don't think Darren knew when he came to dinner that night that we were going to pitch him on a nonprofit and then ask him to help us start it. And then, 8 years later, he'd still be working every day to try and help us meet that mission. I think the best place to start first is I have to just share like the namesake of RHF. So RHF is the Rick Harima Foundation. So Rick Harima is one of those men that I talked about earlier. We talked about the relationship and one of the reasons you stayed in the military. Well, Rick was one of those guys. He was a brother. We're going through the Special Forces qualification course together. That's where we met. And he was really the first person that I met in the military that he really made working on, I was still learning my values, like what were my own personal values at the time. I was still working that out as a young soldier and as a young man. And then I meet this guy who he's better at everything than me. He's faster, he's more fit, he's smarter, he's better at all his military tasks, but yet he's the most humble person I've met. And he was the kind of person that 10 different people would say that's my best friend. He just was a phenomenal person and a phenomenal example of really the values of the military, or the values of, that I aspire to, which is to put others first, to care for others, to be excellent in what you do. So I have to share who Rick was. A couple of things. Rick loved NASCAR. He was he's a big gearhead. We always had a vehicle that we were working on. He loved golf. We'd sit and we'd hit the pitch and wedge in the middle of the little barracks courtyard every day at lunch. But so that's what the Rick Harriman Foundation, we named it after him. Rick was killed in 2006 in Iraq when we were deployed over there. And so it was just a way to honor him and really the value that he had. So the reason we started RHF is, I can remember having conversations with Rick when we were both single soldiers. The conversation was like, hey, one day we know we want to have a family. And we asked ourselves, hey, when you have that family, do you think you'll stay in the military? And I don't think either of us knew the answer. I think the response was like, I hope so, or I think I will, but we didn't know. Well, then fast forward, 3-4 years after Rick was killed, I got married. I had my first child pretty soon after that. And then really in the first 4 or 5 years of marriage, I think I had deployed at least once a year, 4 or 5 times. I deployed the first time 3 months after I got married. And we just, this cycle that really all the people in the military kind of live with and families live with. And we just realized this was getting hard. It was hard to serve with excellence as a soldier, and it was hard to do family well. At that point, when we started Rick's Place, my wife was pregnant with our third child. And so we started Rick's Place because we wanted to keep serving in the military, but yet we didn't want our family to have to suffer because of that, because there's these competing values and priorities. You have the mission, which the military values, but then you have family, which the military values as well, but they compete, and one is more of an espoused value and one is more of an enacted value. So our thought was, how do we come alongside the military? How do we strengthen families so that, we can continue to serve? And this wasn't just us, right? This is what we saw with our peers and our friends. And so we said, hey, let's start a place so that the time that we do have, we don't get a ton of time. We think of time, you think of it as quantity or quality. We don't get quantity because we're constantly gone, whether that's for training or deployments. We said, let's take the time we do have, let's make it quality. And so we started Rick's Place, and the whole idea was to create a place where families could really have fun together and could do relationship together. And so now we've got 50 acres, right next to Fort Bragg, which is the biggest military base in the world by population of service members. And the whole idea is just a place to go have fun, to do relationship, to get that shot in the arm when you're just coming back from a deployment or you've been out training for a couple weeks, in this fun place to play and do life and then build relationships. So that's why we started it. It was because we wanted to keep serving, but we wanted to also do it while we did family well.
Wow, I think that's really amazing. And you kind of answered my next question, but I want to get a little more deeper into it. So the Rick Harriman Foundation, what is unique, would you say, that separates that veteran service organization across other veteran service organizations? What is that crystallizing thing that is different about RHF?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that really are unique to RHF, and the first in my mind is it's sole, our sole focus is active duty military families. There's a lot of programs and things out there that support the service member or support a veteran while he's transitioning. There's a lot of programs that support, injured guys that have gotten injured or have TBIs. There's resources for all of that. There's not as many resources for the family, and kind of like our slogan at Rick's Place is strong family, strong military, strong nation. From lived experience, I truly believe that our military is the strongest when our families are the strongest. More than 50% of service members are married. So if you can keep that family healthy and strong and thriving, then guess what? Your military is stronger and thriving. And we all know if you have a strong military, your nation is stronger for that. So that's one thing that is a distinguisher, is it is focus and our core person we want to serve are the military families that are currently serving, currently deploying. And it's not that we don't love service members, like we do, and we want service members out there, but we're focused on them as a whole and as a unit. Another thing that's different is there's a lot of organizations that do phenomenal stuff, and you can go really get like a shot in the arm, or like this get a week away and you can do a vacation or do something really fun, some kind of outdoor adventure, but it's not where service members live. So we said when we started, we want to take that same concept, which is so valuable, which creates resiliency, which creates strong connections, but we want to put it where people live. And so that's why we did it at Fort Bragg. So that's the other thing that's unique is we went to the military base and we said, we're going to do it here. So it's something that's a part of everyday life. It's not something that you have to plan ahead and get a week of vacation and link up schedules and coordinate everything and also do it when kids are out of school. No, you can do this every week or, every day if you wanted to. And then the last thing is we really wanted it to be about something positive. And we said, Rick's Place is not there to heal or to fix service members or families. Like, we believe that the military family is inherently strong. They're inherently committed. They're, service members, in my opinion, are some of the greatest leaders our nation has. And we said, no, we're here really just to come alongside and to provide a place for families to do what they do naturally, which is to build relationship and build community. And we want them to know that it's just somebody that is alongside them. So soldiers doing it for soldiers, service members built it for service members out of a need. But in my opinion, that's what makes Rick's Place unique. And really, it's why we've had so much success to this point.
Wow, damn, that really, before I take it back to Darren, Josh, that is so amazing to me. I mean, that makes me, I had a cold before I came in here. I think I was going with the flu. You knocked it right out of me. Brother, you knocked it right out of me with your story. That is so profound. I mean, really, I'm holding back tears, to be honest with you. I mean, I think that is so critical and so important that you touch the souls of so many people doing what you're doing, and in a way, it's a lot of hard work putting together what you have to put together, but it's such a simple thing when you think about it. But it's so important, and it's so hard to do. It's simple, but it's hard. It's hard to execute, but it's simple in concept.
Yeah, I agree, Sean. I mean, we just went back. I'm up in D.C. right now, and we just went back last weekend. And the first place my kids wanted to go is Rick's Place. Like that's the thing. Like I'm living it. It's a place that creates that feeling and that connection for us as a military family. So thanks for that.
Darren, what you got for us?
Well, it's so amazing because when Josh sat me down that first night at his home, and they pulled out the plans and said, hey, we want to start a nonprofit, and I've consulted lots and lots of folks in business over the years, and I have been taught to as a knee-jerk reaction, if somebody wants to start a nonprofit organization, try to discourage them. That's always been, my mentors have always said, you try to discourage that, and instead point them and say, so I suggested to Josh, hey, why don't we take this and go find an existing nonprofit and help power that brand? And Josh said, Darren, there's nothing out there like what we're doing. There's nothing out there at all. And so that's where, and then now you've got my attention. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're going to do something that's going to move the needle here. And so I asked a few business questions. I said, well, how far along in the establishment of the 501c3 have you gotten? He says, well, we have state approval. And I said, well, that's usually pretty easy to get. Have you gotten your federal approval? Federal approval normally takes about 18 months. Josh, then a few weeks after that meeting, Josh ended up deploying, and he was gone overseas. And we stayed in touch, and he would message me periodically, hey, I'm working on the RHF concept. I'm working on it. And then all of a sudden I get an email one day saying, Darren, we got our federal approval. In less than 4 months, while he was on deployment, meaning working nights overseas during the day, working on RHF, pulls off a federal approval for 501c3 in under 4 months. That is phenomenal. I've never heard of anything like that. And he said, Darren, would you give 1 year as a board member? I said, man, I am a lifer. And now roll the clock forward, all the work that Josh does professionally for his military career, all the work that he does in his family. His family's grown. He hasn't shared that with you yet, but we'll get there. His family has grown since these days. He was the founder of RHF. He then turned his back and went across a broad range of his network and found all these amazing other board members, some of which I'm sure we'll have on the show here shortly. But, so in my mind, he created more work for himself, more work than just having the family and strengthening the family and having an awesome military career. He went and created a third leg, which is RHF, which is going to support and strengthen all the other families that get involved. And so my question to Josh is, hey, how do you do family and military mixed so well with the burden of the RHF network all around you?
Yeah, well, first, Darren, thanks for your kind words. I don't know that I do it well, but I can tell you that we're constantly trying to improve. I think my immediate response, Darren, is I do it in partnership with my wife. We have been purposeful in doing that. But if I take a step back and I think about this from what are the things that you have to fight against or that make it hard, and then how do you combat that so you can strive to do both well? I think one is community. You have to allow yourself to be in community. For us, so I'm a Christian. I've got a community that's around my church, and those have been a lot of the people that showed up to help when we needed people with chainsaws and axes to clear out the property. The next is my community in the military and the relationships we've built with the people that I've served with, and doing life with them. And then I think how do you create that community for yourself? Within our family, how do we create a culture for our family? And I think where I'll kind of step back and I have to think about this, and this is something you have to fight against it, and it goes into your identity. I think one of the biggest challenges of serving in the military, and so many people want to come up and tell you thank you for your service. They want to tell you I can't believe you've done it for as long as you have, or to your point, man, I can't believe you started a nonprofit. I think, how do you stay grounded in who you are as a person? If I would allow myself to be I'm a Green Beret, that's an awesome thing, and I could wrap my identity around that and make decisions based on that. And if I do, my family's not gonna thrive. Or I could wrap my identity around, I was a part of helping start a nonprofit that has served thousands of people. But if I do that, then and I base decisions based on how that feels and that praise, and that's not going to do good either. So for me, I think how I do it well is I try to stay grounded in my values and in my identity. And for me, first and foremost, my identity is as a dad and as a husband. How do I make sure that that's the priority that I'm basing my decisions off of? I try to stay rooted in my faith. I try to stay rooted in my military service, as in I get to serve others. Not that I've accomplished anything, but it's I've been given the ability to serve others and to try and go after that. So I think that's one of the ways that you do it well. The other is, I had a mentor at one point that he shared with me. He's Josh, when you go home, you should just take a minute before you walk through the door. He said, and it's just, and what he offered was, he's act like you're taking off your work coat and you're hanging it up, and you put on your dad coat and you're a husband coat, and you put that coat on, you walk in the door, and you go after being a dad and a husband just as vigorously and with just as much energy as you went after the training you did that day. And so you walk through the door at 5 or 6 or 7 p.m. and you're on from that point until you go to bed, and you go at that the same way. So I think, wrapping that up, one is making sure that, I guess, you stay humble and you root your identity in who you are and the things that matter the most to you, and the things that are, for me, that's my family, that's my faith, that's serving others. And then two, make sure that you do those things with just as much energy and vigor as you do your job.
Wow, that's really amazing.
Wow.
We have about 30 seconds left. So Darren, Josh,
yeah,
we're so proud of you guys for coming on our show and doing all these things, and also talking to us about RHF and what it means. I think it's so critical that we got a really good glimpse as to not just the what, but the why of why you guys created what you guys created, and the power and an impact that it has across this, the military community. I think it's so. Like I said, that I'm so moved. If I didn't have my military brains right now, I'd be balling right now. Or I would be balling right now.
Right. Yeah. It is a moving situation to be a part of. Do we have a moment for Josh to talk a little bit about what we want RHF to look like next year?
You got about 10 seconds. I'll give you 10 seconds.
Okay.
Well, I think that's easy. Darren, Sean, I think our hope is that we'll continue to figure out ways to provide programming and a place for families to connect. And, that is through the military base, through units, through families, So with that's the 10-second version. I think long-term, we hope to grow Rick's Place to go to other military bases so we can do the same thing there.
Got to get it done. Darren Jeffrey is a founding board member of RHF and also the original course creator and builder for the TV show American Ninja Warrior. Josh Woehr, U.S. Army Sergeant Major and White House Fellow. Thank you guys for being with us. Love you both.
All right. Thanks, Sean. Bye, Darren.
This is America's Heroes Group. Bye. We'll be right back.
Thank you for watching another episode of America's Heroes Group, where we provide education about resources and information for our veterans, military, and their family.
We have in our chase bags, we have a care package of hygiene, we have shaving equipment, we have razors, and for the women we have the same personal hygiene items for them as well. And we want to say thank you for their service. This is Chase Bank. Thank you very much.
People in the neighborhood, free haircuts, and service and food. Look good. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service.
Okay. On behalf of Cliff Kelley, America's Heroes Group, we sincerely thank Chase Bank for coming where it matters to help homeless veterans have a hot meal today and a care package. We are sincerely grateful for this partnership. Yes.
Welcome to America's Heroes Group. Hear your voice where we connect the disconnected intentionally.
Who is Cliff Kelley, the governor of talk radio, the icon of radio throughout the world?
Chauncey Spencer II and I, again, share a special relationship. His late great father, Tuskegee Airman Chauncey E. Spencer, took me as a child on my first airplane ride.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is something that people need to see. Often we don't, do the things to show how great our people are. It changes the paradigm of how people think about us, about the collective consciousness of what it means to be us.
And we've been having great conversations about trying to get more African Americans into aviation. And we got a bill that we're trying to get passed that would allow the Pell Grant to be used to help finance aviation education.
This is where I started with this entire conversation by saying, if it were not for America's Heroes Group, I would have given up. So I want to get all my accolades out the way on behalf of America's Heroes Group. Ms. Glenda, thank you. Thank you for encouraging me to press on. I would encourage you all to support this organization. One thing for sure, America's Hero Group is out there. Ms. Glenda will take the time. Ms. Glenda Smith will take the time to listen to you and to steer you in the direction that you need to go.
Thank you for watching another episode of America's Heroes Group, where we provide education about resources and information for our veterans, military, and their family. Welcome to America's Heroes Group, with information and resources that's disseminated intentionally to empower our military population, with host Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelley, co-host Iraq veteran Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, and co-host Army National Guard veteran Sean Claiborne. And now, America's Heroes Group. Thank you for watching another episode of America's Heroes Group, where we provide education about resources and information for our veterans, military, and their family.
We have in our chase bags, we have a care package of hygiene, we have shaving equipment, we have razors, and for the women we have the same personal hygiene items for them as well. And we want to say thank you for their service. This is Chase Bank. Thank you very much.
People in the neighborhood, free haircuts, and service and food. Look good.
Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Thank you,
Okay. On behalf of Cliff Kelley, America's Heroes Group, we sincerely thank Chase Bank for coming where it matters to help homeless veterans have a hot meal today and a care package. We are sincerely grateful for this partnership. Yes.
Welcome to America's Heroes Group. Hear your voice, where we connect the disconnected intentionally.
Welcome back to America's Heroes Group. This time with our roundtable and our partner, National Women's Veterans United, NWVU. December is AIDS Awareness and National Human Rights Month. Today is Saturday, December 10th, 2022. Our host is Cliff Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host, Army National Guard veteran. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith, and our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Honor Productions. And we have a familiar voice. You've heard her many times on our show, and also as a panelist and a Roundtable panelist years ago when we first started America's Heroes Group. Miss Rochelle Crump. She's a U.S. Army veteran, founder, and president of National Women's Veterans United. And we're going to talk about something that I know she has a lot to say about, and that is the lack of funding support that's needed for women veterans organizations. What is going on, Rochelle? How you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine. And you? How are you, Sean?
Doing good, doing good.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
I hear you perfect, loud and clear.
Oh, wonderful.
So tell us what's going on. So tell us about the discrepancy or the inconsistency, perhaps, with funding for women's veteran service organizations. What is the process like, and who are the people that donate to you, first of all?
Well, the people who donate to us are mostly like our members, our families, and mostly outside entities when we've had grants other than like grants with the health initiative, in which we got a lot of grants, small grants, but nonetheless they came when needed, and that was from Pfizer, for health benefits and awareness for women veterans. And the majority of our grants that we've had have been outside of Illinois. You know, when we first moved, we got a good grant from an outside entity from Birmingham, Alabama. And we got another grant from California. And those were our largest grants. And other than that, we picked up small grants like from NICOR. And pretty much that's kind of been it, other than our the fundraisers that we do and things like that. We applied at the McCormick Foundation before, and it seemed like we couldn't ever get involved with them. I don't know, sometimes I used to think it was personality, but, you have to look the other way, and you just keep moving in the direction in which you can try to other, entities to get grants. So when the Cook County came out with the grant, we just knew that we would, be a part of that. It was a struggle. Number one is because we had a major event going on at the same time. You had less than 30 days to put the grant together. Some of the things that they wanted, for example, you had to have like what they call the entity ID number. Well, that replaced pretty much your DUNS number because they're no longer using the DUNS number, and that's critical, used to be critical for you to get grants outside of, just regular grants, because it has a lot to do with government procurement and things like that. And so just learning that process, trying to learn it at the last minute, I was able to secure it. I was not able to at the last minute. I went all the way down to the wire with that grant. I had good notes from there. I participated in the webinar, and there was about 200 and something people on that line, Wow. And I really didn't like the way that they the announcement that came out of who the recipients of the grants were, which came out November the 10th. But my expectation was that they should have, in my opinion, just my opinion, that if you had 200 and something people who were interested in the grant and you had all of those emails, it would have been nice if they had received that information, via email, since they had the power to do that pretty much. I think that would have been really good, because I kept looking around for it, and I finally found it on November the 10th. And I looked up the list, and I went down the list, and I just, kind of said, okay. Only thing about it is they don't tell you what they do, what the funding is for. It doesn't give you like any clue of that unless you are familiar with the agency yourself. Some of them I am familiar with. Others, I kind of looked them up briefly just to see, what they do. Some of them are newcomers. They didn't necessarily work in the aspect for veterans, but in the community, and most of them are community-based. I looked at some of their boards and things like that to see if they had veterans on their board or in their leadership. I looked to see if they had an agenda for veterans on some of the websites. You know, some did and some didn't.
And these are the recipients of the grant, the Cook County grant you're talking
about? Yes, the recipients of the grant. Because, you know, there was $100,000 awards, and I think there were about 10 of them.
Okay.
Yeah, 10 of those, and then they had 50,000, about 8 or 9 of them. You know,
is
and
so there a set number that they're going for with these grants? Or are they looking for, at least for this Cook County grant?
They were awarded the grant.
But is there like a set amount of organizations that are going to get it? There were like 10 slots, or is it just anybody who qualifies gets these grants?
No, there were different grants that they had to apply for, and you either went for the 100,000 or you went for the 50,000, and that's all really that they did. We thought they were going to do $10,000 grants and stuff like that, but it's my understanding now that there is $80,000, I guess, sitting in that coffer for honor grants, and that's to be announced in spring of 2023. I guess they're going to open it up again, is what I'm thinking. An additional $80,000 in honor grants funding will be announced in spring of 2023. So I'm in the thought that they will have probably 10,000 grants, which would, you know, pretty much bring in like 8 more organizations, and you know, I guess we'll apply for that. Now, what I looked at is some of the ones that got the $100,000. One of them was Safe Haven. They get a lot of grants. If you know anything about Safe Haven, they know how to write good grants, I guess. They got a shoe in everywhere you go because they got a lot of money. They operate homeless, not just for veterans, but also for those who are incarcerated who can't go to any communities because of sexual or, predator issues on their names, and they can't go into the community and, different places. It's hard to place them, when they get out of prison and everything. So they got a lot of them. There's no separatism for veterans that are homeless and go to Safe Haven, and that's one of the issues that I have. In fact, that's the most important issue that I have, because I don't believe that veterans who have served this country honorably should have to go into a shelter and be a part of a regime pretty much that treats those homeless men and women just like they're still in prison. I've seen them marching in for lunch.
So you feel that Safe Haven treats homeless people like they're prisoners?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And for the women had complaints that were in Safe Haven at a time when we were helping some of them because they were moving. They got the voucher. They were able to move out and everything, and they still needed assistance, and we assisted them. And that was some of their biggest complaints, was that they had to share a room with people who had been incarcerated, and also they had to share that room with even their child in there. Some of them could not bring their male children, as in all of the shelters. That's a rule. After a certain age, the child, if it's a male, cannot be on the female side.
All right, they treat that.
Well, no one is going to leave.
Mm-hmm. A lot of shelters are like that, where you can't, if you're like over 16, I think, or something like that. Yeah, you can't have them.
But
they treat them like men, basically. But then you put the kid with with grown men, and that could be another issue, another problem.
Absolutely. But no woman is going to leave their child, even if they were a teenager, 14, 15, 12 years old, because I think that's the limit. And some of them have even cheated if they were small, and may have had age, but they didn't tell them that. They tried to make sure that they were able to stay with them. I would not take my son over to the other side with grown men that I know nothing about, and these people have been in prison and all that. You know what I'm saying? Absolutely not. So, some of them just don't even go there. But nonetheless, my point there is that, I asked them if they would start a wing for women veterans so that they could be separated and have their own little wing where they would feel a lot better with, being down and out at that time after, being in such resiliency in the military and other things they may have done, and then found themselves in a situation where they were homeless. So, and that was not a place that they could thrive, not a place where they could actually grow and help themselves, because a lot of them started giving up, you know what I'm saying? And it became a lot for them, especially with mental health issues already. So, and that never existed for the wing. They said that they would look at it. Of course, they never did. So now we get to the one for Benjamin Davis, VFW Post 311. Now, I'm very troubled by that. And I'm troubled because the past commander of that organization, he is the last past commander, worked for the same office where this grant is derived from. That is a conflict of interest in many ways. Although he is not the commander any longer, he was he worked as an employee. And employees have a obligation to comply with a revolving door policy, which is set by ethics. And I believe that this is a failed overlook, maybe. We'll say it's a hope that they overlooked it, and maybe they don't understand that it looks like, just what they were trying to present it from looking like. And that was for and it was an effort with ethics to make sure that it would not look like someone was using their connections with the county because they worked as an employee or was an officer or something like this. Well, that's exactly what it looks like.
So if someone works for the county, they can't apply for the grants?
Yes, okay. Because the people who were actually operating the grant are the ones that they worked with.
Okay.
And it's no dispute about that. There's a 1-year revolving door policy. I know with the state of Illinois, when I retired from the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago, that revolving door was effective for the state of Illinois for sure. I could never get a grant from my organization for the from the Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs. It was a clear conflict because I was the assistant director there before. But even after so many years, how long do you keep somebody from, being executed for that policy? And each time I actually, found that it was, to me, it was oh no, because you worked here before, you know the people and all this stuff. And I'm like, that policy is only a year old. I've been away from there almost 10 years, but nonetheless, you look at that, this is really fresh. He has not been retired yet a year, I don't think.
Wow.
And so, I think that we're going to have to raise some questions about it. Not that, I'm, mad that they got it or anything like that. I'm happy that they got it, and I hope that they'll use it appropriately to help veterans in the Cook County area.
Now, do we know for sure that you mentioned the state of Illinois has a rule where if you have a 1-year revolving door policy, do you know if Cook County has that the same rule, or is that?
Yes, they do. Okay. Actually, I looked it up, and it was effective March the 31st.
Mm-hmm.
Post-employment restrictions and associated waivers. Now, maybe he got a waiver. I don't know how he could get a waiver because he's not even over a year. And you can't say that that person would not be an influence when you worked with that person. There's no way possible that you can even justify it.
Mm-hmm. One of the things you brought up, too, is that a lot of the people that are recipients tend to be the same organizations. How much turnaround or how frequently do you see new organizations as recipients of these grants?
Well, Cook County, this is like the first time that I've ever seen them have money to do this type of grant. The people who are getting these grants are recipients from other entities that always manage to get the grants because, number one, is they might have the staff to do so. And that was some of the complaints that was on the initial webinar where they were asking questions and getting answers, and the administrators of the grants and those people who were going to be looking at the grants basically indicated that, oh, we'll look at that, you have to, but you it's up to you to be able to figure out how to get that grant complete. It's not up to them. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So much of that was you having this grant for veterans, but you also heard the cry out for the issues that are blocking veterans from being able to get the grant, because they don't have the staff, they don't have the people who know how to write the grants and things like that. They didn't have the funds to hire, a grant writer. So they were saying, well, we'll look at it another time and blah, blah, and that's just how blah, blah, And so, but, you're looking at this, like this is another one. They get a lot of grants, a lot of money. They get money from the federal government, from the VA. They do a good job, of course, and I'm not going to say that because I used to work with them. I'm not saying it just because I worked with them before. I'm saying it because I know the work that they have done. I have witnessed the work that they've done. Mm-hmm. Now, what I have not witnessed is the VFW, any work that they've done other than having, members to come together. They have a large membership, they did a resource fair, they do a lot of other things and stuff, but it appears that, they're doing it for the population of the people that are their memberships who would benefit for it, and rightfully so, because they are veterans too, rightfully so. So it's like they already have a hand of people who they can assist, right there, a pool right there. As far as doing something on the outside, I mean, maybe they didn't have the funds to do it. I don't know.
Well, it sounds like to me, like when we look at not just with veteran service organizations, but pretty much with charities in general, 501c3s in general, a lot of the bigger grants tend to go to the bigger organizations, just because, like you mentioned, they have all the resources and things like that. Do you feel that are there any incubator type programs? Because there are some, like in the small business world, for example, there are programs and grants that you can get as a small business that a large organization may not be able to, won't be able to qualify to apply for because they're too big. Like should maybe Cook County or maybe the state of Illinois or different jurisdictions create particular grants just for small VSOs? Maybe $10,000, $5,000 or so on.
Mm-hmm. And I think I believe that's what their attempt would be with the $80,000. Mm-hmm. I believe that's what it is. However, when you look at the ones who already got the large grants, they already have, like Volunteers of America. That's another one. You look at, like I said, there's some other ones too that are they're newcomers, and you look at, the legal services and things like that, looking at what they do and what they don't do. Some of the things that they do that got me is that they do legal things, but they don't do the legal things that most of them need the legal problems for. That's parking tickets, traffic tickets, criminal, personal injuries. Those are the things that they need, and those are the things they don't do. So, when you look at the base of, well, how do you plan on, helping them with the funds that you get if you don't do all those things that they really need you to do? So, and the same thing with the housing piece. We want to see more housing come up. Well, Safe Haven there in Indiana now, they got housing going on now, big houses too, projects for homeless veterans in Indiana, because they have the opportunity to get into all those, and they are well connected. Inner Voice is another one. They got money. They could use money. They house veterans, They've got a good board that works on behalf of veterans, and they are great, in terms of what they do. They do service projects themselves, even being homeless and in the homeless thing. I used to be on that board before, too, and I'm just saying this because I've witnessed the work that they do. So you give credit where credit is due. And so those veterans help veterans move. They've done things like that, at the drop of a hat. You call them, and they'll do stuff like that. So you got another.
No. It's just, I was saying. So, but let me ask you this one question. We have about a minute left, so just to kind of encapsulate everything. So, when you look at the whole list of the recipients, do you think as a whole these groups and organizations are actually doing things, substantial things, not just things for show, but substantial things to improve the veteran community, at least in the footprint that they're supposed to cover?
I can't say that because if you go to their websites and look, a lot of them were not really doing veteran projects. So these are newcomers. Some of them are newcomers to the veteran community, and maybe they have dealt with some veterans before that wasn't an agenda for them, though.
Wow.
And that's what we have to look at, So, and then how are people going to know that these people got this money that they can now go to and ask them for help if they don't know what help they can ask for?
That's famous
So, and I
last
think
words.
that's the biggest problem.
We're out of time. So, Rochelle, thanks for coming out and tell us about this. So let us go and look at this, and let's raise questions, and also reach out to these organizations and let them know what is happening. U.S. Army veteran founder, president of National Women's Veterans United. This is America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back.
Thank you for watching another episode of America's Heroes Group, where we provide education about resources and information for our veterans, military, and their family.
We have in our chase bags, we have a care package of hygiene, we have shaving equipment, we have razors, and for the women we have the same personal hygiene items for them as well. And we want to say thank you for their service. This is Chase Bank. Thank you very much.
People in the neighborhood, free haircuts, and service and food. Look good. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service.
Okay. On behalf of Cliff Kelley, America's Heroes Group, we sincerely thank Chase Bank for coming where it matters to help homeless veterans have a hot meal today and a care package. We are sincerely grateful for this partnership. Yeah.
Welcome to America's Heroes Group. Hear your voice where we connect the disconnected intentionally.
Who is Cliff Kelley, the governor of talk radio, the icon of radio throughout the world?
Chauncey Spencer II and I, again, share a special relationship. His late great father, Tuskegee Airman Chauncey E. Spencer, took me as a child on my first airplane ride.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is something that people need to see. Often we don't, do the things to show how great our people are. It changes the paradigm of how people think about us, about the collective consciousness of what it means to be us.
And we've been having great conversations about trying to get more African Americans into aviation. And we got a bill that we're trying to get passed that would allow the Pell Grant to be used to help finance aviation education.
This is where I started with this entire conversation by saying, if it were not for America's Heroes Group, I would have given up. So I want to get all my accolades out the way on behalf of America's Heroes Group. Ms. Glenda, thank you. Thank you for encouraging me to press on. I would encourage you all to support this organization. One thing for sure, America's Hero Group is out there. Ms. Glenda will take the time. Ms. Glenda Smith will take the time to listen to you.
And welcome back to America's Heroes Group, this time with our roundtable and our partner, the Veterans Legislative Voice. December is AIDS Awareness and National Human Rights Month. Today is Saturday, December 10th, 2022. We got our holly out for the holidays. Our host is Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith, and our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Honor Productions. And we have our partner on the line, Stephanie Collada, U.S. Army Reserve Sergeant First Class, and she's a veteran and founder and creator of the Veterans Legislative Voice. How you doing today?
I'm doing all right. I'm here. Here, Sean.
So we got polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFAS. And
yes.
This is some legislation, I guess, coming out about this. There's some legislation coming out about this that we want to talk about. So first of all, tell us what that stuff is, and then why is it important?
So we commonly do call it PFAS. This also includes a wider realm of chemicals that kind of go under its umbrella, kind of like how Agent Orange is just the name for all of them, because there was actually all rainbows of colors for those agent chemicals, dioxins that were used. And so PFAS is most commonly found in firefighting foam to help with fires, electrical, gas, fuel, what have you, when it comes to things on airports and the airstrips.
So, like, and we're talking about material in fire, like fire retardant material? Is that what we're talking about?
No, it's in the firefighting foam.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the chemicals used. They found that the chemicals are resistant to very high heat, grease, oil, moisture. It also has been used on nonstick pans, although they have not used them as much anymore. It's the reason why I use stainless steel and a bunch of other things. And they're like forever chemicals. They're always going to be there for, like diotoxins from Agent Orange. They're always going to be there, and they can also accumulate in the body for at least 4 years. And it can wreck a lot of things in the body because many people have been developing cancers that they believe is connected to PFAS.
So if you get a Teflon pan or something that has nonstick coating on it for Christmas, you have a gift, and then you have another gift that keeps on giving. And a bad
well,
one.
it's mostly when the actual outside liner starts to strip. You know how with nonstick pans you get the strip and you get it shredding. Yeah, that's when you throw it away. They use it very less anymore in the nonstick pan, so please don't go crazy, everybody.
Yeah, there was a Consumer Reports study that came out recently that they did a test on it. You can look it up online. The Consumer Reports found they looked at the couple of major brands. They did not test positive for PFAS, but there were a couple of I guess we want to call it traditional looking pans that claimed they did not have any PFAS, but they actually found that in some nonstick pans. So you got to be very careful when you're looking at these. It's not like it's just completely eradicated from, cookware. And like you said, I particularly prefer stainless steel myself. That's the exact reason why I stick with stainless steel.
Yeah, I mean, I might use a nonstick pans very carefully, but the thing is that whenever they start to do all the wear and tear, then you throw it away and you get something new. I have to always do that. And for military people and for veterans, firefighting foam is used because military practices all the time. And they will practice with the actual things they need for exercises, for what may happen. And so there has been practices that they used with the actual firefighting foam, and it can saturate the ground, and then the groundwater goes to the water cisterns that's also collected on military bases. And it could be in the water that people drink, that work on the base, live on the base. So this is not just for military, it's also the families, because many families live on base. Or the water can also be very near to civilian populations with their water. So that's been something that's been a topic of concern. And since there's been so much that has already been done for burn pits and Gulf War veterans, for those toxic exposures, for many, the scope is now turning towards stateside toxic exposures, and PFAS is one of those that's becoming a hot topic right now.
Wow. So do you think like a lot of this contaminated water is what really grabs me a lot, because do you think the things are leaching into the groundwater? And I'm not too familiar. I really don't know. I think Fort Jackson had. I think that's water is piped in when I was in Fort Jackson. But a lot of places we've seen this in recent months in the news about a lot of places like Camp Lejeune or so on, where there was contamination in drinking water. We had it here in Illinois and a veterans home. What's going on with the water? How is the water getting contaminated?
Well, a good example would be Red Hill, which is in Hawaii on Oahu, and the families that lived on Pearl Harbor and the surrounding military areas, they were all on one big water system, and there were still fuel storage used in the ground around these waters, and these are storage systems that were built before World War II, and of course they're getting old and degrading, and fuel made it into the water there, and a lot of people got sick. A lot of people, because if it's low enough, you can't tell when there's fuel in it when it's that low of concentration. But then that builds up, and a lot of children got sick. A lot of families had to deal with a lot of issues. And the biggest scandal about it is that the base commander basically told them, "Oh, you guys are crazy. There's no contamination of the water. Water's fine where he's at." And he got in a lot of trouble. And they've done congressional hearings covering that. And the Navy has finally said that they're going to close down the fuel storage because the state and Hawaii and Honolulu has been putting their foot down with the military and say, look, you do this, or we're not going with any of the other deals that we do with you guys. So that's what they finally came down to doing. Man. So
what are some of the health risks? What are some of the things people need to know about if they have exposure? Because long-term exposure can lead to a lot of different serious health risks besides cancer, a lot of things that could happen to your body.
Yes, and so it just depends on the type of chemical that you find that's in the water and contamination. I do encourage, you can actually go online and search. It's called Consumer Confidence Reports. And you can Google your base or the neighboring base and look those up. They even do them for the cities a lot of times. And that gives you an idea of what the testing and what may be in your water. You can also get test kits for that. There's been a handful of different things that have been popping up with PFAS specifically. Thyroid cancer, bladder, esophageal. There's been, I'm trying to remember, I'm thinking of the thyroid. There's been other issues that's been going down that way, and I believe kidney is the other one. Because it's the water, that's the last organ it goes through.
Wow, I've even heard of stuff like, they're saying that even the PFAS could even cause you to have a weakened immune response, or it decreases the effectiveness of a lot of vaccines.
Yes. Yeah, I've heard that one too. It's because if the body's already fighting an infection or an allergic attack or things like that, that I know personally, if you have an allergy attack like I do, I usually catch a cold or an infection while I'm trying to fight the allergy attack because it lowers your immune system.
Wow.
Yeah.
High blood pressure. I mean, things that you may not think about that, a lot of people have: high blood pressure, high cholesterol. That actually could be a contributor, or things that, which when you look at, and this is a whole other aside, not to go too far on a tangent, but when you look at the history of health in America over the last 100 years, we're living longer, which is good, a good thing. Our life expectancies are increasing, although since the pandemic they slightly decreased after the pandemic because of throw off the numbers. But overall, we've been in this trajectory of going up in life expectancy, but we're getting these crazy cancers and weird things. Some of it, we wonder if it's because our technology is just being able to detect these things sooner, which is helping us live longer. But are some of these things
I think it's that one. I think it's that one. And I also think it's because more people are seeing the doctor. More people are able to get treated thanks to Obamacare and other things. More people are getting more care. And because 100 years ago, only the rich and the upper middle class could see the doctor. You might try to, if your doctor allowed you to, take chickens instead of actual money, you could try that. But so the data from back then can be skewed. There was also not a whole lot of data collection. You know me, I'm the data nerd. And so that can skew. There's cancer registrations now that they'll put it on for locations so that they can watch cancer clusters, those type of things. So, yeah, it looks like all the numbers are going up, but I think it's because of screening. They're catching it better and more. I think that's really what's going on here.
But the second part of that, though, is that we have longer life expectancy, but we seem to be living sicker. So we have, widespread obesity. We have widespread, cancers. Like cancer is just a thing that everybody is just, that is exposed to. Everybody has some kind of connection or knows somebody, has a family member or a friend who has died or has cancer they have to overcome, whether it be breast cancer, thyroid cancer, something more serious like lymphoma. I mean, forget about, so the environment that we live in, we have to be really, really, really careful as to what's going into our bodies. And what we're getting more and more information about it, we're finding out that the stuff that we use every day that we take totally for granted can have long-term effects on your body.
Yeah, and it's so true. And I look back and think, because when I have lived right next to Fort Lewis in Washington State, and I had I had stepkids, and I've taken my stepkids to the lakes there because there's a lot of beautiful, fun lakes to go to. And I think back, and I'm like, dang, I'm worried about the PFAS that may be in there and anything else that may be in there that you just don't know about. And it's kind of scary. It's an Aaron Brockovich kind of situation when you're living this issue. And it's pretty scary. I'd recently lost a friend who is 29-year veteran. He was about to retire, and he had been diagnosed with stage 4 esophageal cancer. He was a burn pits veteran. He was also on many of the bases that I've been on that is suspected to have PFAS contamination, and he was 47. And it's really hard to watch that happen, and then you feel like it's ticking time bomb, but then you're also like, I need to help, and we need to try to fix this. So then that way there's not another Sergeant First Class Jason Powell. He actually worked in you guys' neighboring area, in the Army Reserve Center in Darien. He was the retention NCO there, and so it's pretty hard. But we can pivot. We can pivot to Congress for the legislative stuff before I get emotional.
But the thing of it is, and I feel for you, and I think it's okay to be emotional. Let it out, man. We had a couple of guys and they were talking about some stuff, and I almost bawled out. To be honest with you, almost lost my military bearings for a second. To be honest with you, but the thing of it is that, and I want to preface this a little bit because I already know what some of the pushback would be to my question. There is the commercial interest in what's driving a lot of the contaminants that go into our everyday products, because it's not just things that are in our ground or soil or water, but even the products that we buy, like for example cookware, things along those lines, the toys and all that kind of different things. Businesses and corporations have an incentive to an extent, not to say that they're maliciously just looking the other way or being blind, but it's hard sometimes when your bottom line depends on selling a product and you think you have this wonder product that might be using new technology or new materials or new things, but maybe you didn't do the due diligence to look at the significant health risks, but particularly when it's long term, because you can do a study for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, but a lot of this stuff takes 10, 20, 30 years to show up. When you die of asbestos poisoning, you don't die of asbestos poisoning like you don't eat some asbestos and then die the next day. That stuff may not show up till 20, 30 years later.
Yep, and it's very hard to get the benefits when that happens too.
Right. So we talk about all the time, or the business community talks about all the time. Well, there's too much regulation. There's too much stuff going on. Which in some cases, sure, that's true. But the reality is, no one else can really help protect us when you think about it, other than laws and regulations to kind of referee the businesses and corporations that come up with these brand ideas and brand products and all the things that make our life more convenient. But we need legislation to referee those types of things so that we're not poisoning ourselves slowly. And you have even the tobacco industry trying to tell you for years and years and years and decades that tobacco smoke is really not that bad. And then, and then all of a sudden, it's like, okay, well, that doesn't sound half right. But because of that financial incentive, they almost want to believe that they have a product that's a wonderful product.
Yes.
So what is legislation being done about trying to referee these businesses and corporations to clean up our environment, to police these businesses and the contractors and the practices that we do every day that's actually hurting us?
Well, there is a handful of bills that are in the movement, and I'm focusing more that has at least passed one chamber of Congress. So there is the Federal PFAS Research Evaluation Act, and it's passed the House. We've got T-minus 3 weeks before it dies in this congressional session. So this one would actually get reports done from the national academies. And so then that would actually do intensive studies on the life cycle information on manufacture and use and disposal of products that contain PFAS. They're going to identify the potential human exposure sources. They're going to do the study of them with fate and transport on the breakdown of their products and pretty much how to dispose of them when they do identify these products, and then try to study how people are exposed, how people are going to get affected by these different things. And it's pretty in-depth, and there's words that I can't pronounce, but I'm trying to summarize for you on that. So that hopefully will get passed. It's passed the House. We're hoping the Senate, because it is it's a Democrat side bill. So hopefully with the majority and a little some on the Senate side, that they're going to be able to pass it soon. So that's one of the things that I'm worried about and looking forward to. The other one is preventing PFAS runoff at airports. This one has already passed the House and the Senate. Yeah, this one's already passed the House and the Senate. It's in the resolving differences. So basically there's a little bit of issues going on by line, probably things that need to be fixed by a few lawyers, periods, verbs, because those things can change funding significantly depending on how it's worded. So that's one of the things that's happened. And then it would actually provide reimbursements for airports that are eligible for it to actually get the equipment to prevent the runoff of PFAS with the firefighting foam. So this is basically like a rebate or just a benefits program so that airports will file for, they can get the reimbursement for doing this, and that way it's not out of their pocket as well.
Wow. When you mentioned airports, I had to say something because I worked at an airport, did a project at an airport for about 7 or 8 years. Got 2 airports, matter of fact, we're here in Midway. And there's a lot of health concerns when it comes to dealing with jet fuel and also dealing with chemicals and things around airports that people don't realize. And really, all public transportation, even being next to expressways, there's a lot of studies that show that the fumes coming off of exhaust from cars and trucks living near expressways is all kinds of health risks and health issues that pop up around the residents around those areas and even around airports. This is my own personal. I don't want to go into too much detail because it is a very technical and specific topic, and you don't want to alarm people and give people the wrong ideas, because we know how the internet works. We know how how word of mouth works. People start talking about stuff and they start spreading things that aren't true, and then they start saying stuff and exaggerating things. But a real fact I can say, not going into secondhand information or whatever, but a real fact from firsthand experience, I used to see a lot of and interview a lot of residents around airports here in Illinois. And I one thing that struck me and the people and my partner was that we found a high incidence and this incredibly weird stuff going on where people were sick. People that lived in the area for many, many, many years, sometimes second generation, were just, I mean, somebody, okay, this person committed suicide in this place. This person has cancer. That person has cancer. This person has some kind of weird disease. This person has this other weird disease. And it's like, okay, you're seeing tons and tons of people over and over again. And every time you turn around on a very consistent basis, there was a huge correlation between people that lived around airports and around public transportation and high correlations to serious and deadly disorders, particularly cancer and other types of weird, extremely rare diseases.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just like the burn pits with specific lung cancers that are so very rare. I completely believe it. There's the same about those that live around oil wells and oil rigs. Not many people may know this, but I mean, if you've ever been out west, and especially LA has at least 3 I know of oil rigs that are in urban areas, and there's actually cancer clusters around those areas.
Wow.
So it's really scary when those things are up going on there. I get angry with the EPA when I read these things. So yes, those things can happen. I used to work in the trucking world, and I was around those fumes a lot, and a lot of people do get sick from it, and it's pretty scary when you think about it. And so with those things, we just have to be with our due diligence of looking things up, looking the legitimate reports up, and making sure that it is well researched. Some of the things that I have problems with, at least for the consumer confidence reports, that's for the military, they do their own studies. And personally, when they do their own studies and investigations and things like that, I have a little bit of a lower confidence with it. And so it's always best to try to get an outside source with those type of things. So trying to speak to your congresspeople about this and trying to tell them what you believe, what you think, and what's important to you as a constituent, because they'll listen, and those type of things will hopefully sink in, and they do make it to congressional hearings and congressional bills.
Right. I even think about guys on aircraft carriers. This is my experience working around airports. Like thinking about people that work on aircraft carriers and the types of protection equipment they probably should be wearing, particularly when they're breathing all of that jet fuel, and those planes coming off and on, those jets coming off and on that carrier all day long.
Yeah, I used to work on ships with loading Army equipment on ships, and in those stow holds, we were in Kuwait, so then the vents could only run at half strength because it was so hot that the engines would burn out. So so the ventilation still wasn't that great. It's 140 degrees. It 10 more inside the ship, and then all this fuel and exhaust happening inside those places. Yeah, I get myself checked multiple times. Oh, to bring up follow on for the burn pits, all veterans that you qualify with the burn pits in Gulf War, you can get a voluntary screening test for all things that they do identify that is associated and presumptive to burn pits and Gulf War. Wow. So call your primary care doctor, get that exam done. That way you can do all the screening that you have concerns with, and they'll get things ordered and tested.
Man, I appreciate you coming on our show again, and once again giving us great information. I think it's so critical that we learn these things. And stuff, like I said, these are things that we take for granted every single day, and they're not just specific to the veteran community. These are actually things that affect families that live around bases, families that live around major airports or things along those lines, any place where even corporations and businesses, downstream from a chemical plant, whatever it might be. These are things we have to take serious and talk to our legislators about. Appreciate you for doing this.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
As always, Stephanie, Veterans Legislative Voice, brings the information with the resources and lay it down unapologetically. Bravo, lady. Bravo.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to you and your family.
You too, and all of you guys, Merry Christmas. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, sweetheart. What 4 great shows we had today, Sean?
Yeah.
Jesse Brown, VA, partner RHF Ninja Warrior Competition, National Women's Veterans United, and the one and only Miss Stephanie Collada of Veterans Legislative Voice.
Yeah, great.
This is the second show we've had with a White House fellow. That really tells us at this point that all that we've done over the years has not been in vain, that the hard work is paying off, that we are being accepted as a show of excellence with integrity that has content. So I praise God. To God be the glory for blessing us to still be here, so that this format is for the military population of veterans, active service members, and their family members. This is their show, their voice. What a better co-host can they have other than you?
I'll try my best. But
The
make
host-
sure, guys, audience, that you go to americashg.org and also leave your comments. See us on social media, on YouTube, Facebook. Let us know what's going on. And if you have it to give, I mean, we are 501c3. You can also donate to support us, so make sure that we stay on the air and also keep doing the things that we do every day.
Absolutely, because if you don't help us, we won't be here next year. We are asking now for donations from you. PayPal, 20, 40, it makes a difference. Give to America's Heroes Group, because why? We have given to you. To our technical producer, Kaya, oh my gosh, bravo, excellent. To the best digital media producer anyone could ever ask for, Scouts Honor of, Ivan Ortega of Scouts Honor Production. Oh, have a wonderful, safe, and beautiful holiday weekend. Merry Christmas to all.
And to all a good night.
And to all a good night. America's Heroes Group, guys.
America's Heroes Group.
Thank you for watching another episode of America's Heroes Group, where we provide education about resources and information for our veterans, military, and their family.